A good night of Shabbos from Chestnut Hill. On a couple of our days, when we were just in Jerusalem, in Israel, we spent 2 days in Judea and Samaria, going through all the biblical places that have so much rich meaning and heritage of our matriarchs and patriarchs. And one of the places we went to is right near Jericho, where we see the Jordan and where the Jewish people crossed into the Holy Land of Israel. And you can literally, you see the Jordan Desert, you see where the river was, where the ocean was, etc., etc. Now, it's interesting, because in this week's Torah portion, we read about the Jewish people going into the land of Israel. And the Torah tells us something remarkable that not many people pay attention to. The Torah tells us that Moses commanded the Jewish people that when they go over the Jordan and enter the land of Israel, they should take 12 stones. You should write upon these 12 stones the entire Torah. Now the rabbis tell us that when the Jews crossed the Jordan, it was no small feat. In fact, the commentaries and the prophets tell us how God had to hold the water so the Jewish people could go on the dry land. You know, we always think about when the Jews crossed into the desert from Egypt about the great miracle, but this was no small miracle on its own. And the rabbis say that while the Jewish people were in the dry land crossing over the Jordan, and God was holding the water, at that moment, Joshua wrote on the 12 stones the Torah that Moses had commanded. And the commentaries argue, was it just the 613 mitzvahs, or was it the entire Torah? And then it says, V'sadat ha'isa masid, they plastered it afterwards. Was it after they wrote the letters, before? But before we get to that, there's one basic question. Why did Joshua have to wait? And why couldn't Joshua, wait until the Jews crossed over, came into Israel, and then write the stones right there on the other bank of the river? When the Jews crossed over the Jordan, right there, he could have wrote the stones. Why did he have to write it while God was holding up the water and the Jewish people were in the river? So, in general, the commentaries tell us that the reason why Moses wanted them to write it is because Moses knew that the Jews are going to come in, they're going to conquer the land of Israel from the Canaanites and the Hittites and all the great powerful nations. They're going to feel powerful and they're going to want to put up monuments to celebrate the victory like every other nation does. But Moses didn't want them to make monuments for themselves. He said, you're going to make monuments, but the monuments are going to be for the Torah, for God. And that's why you're going to put up 12 stones, and on those 12 stones you're going to write the Torah. But why couldn't Joshua wait? So it's interesting, because while we arrived on Thursday morning, and we came home, and we had half an hour to get the kids ready for school. And we rushed, we got the kids ready, and all of them pulled out, they had new backpacks and new pencils and sharpeners and notebooks, and they were getting it ready, and they were so excited the first day of school. And they came home, and my kids were telling me, this one's going to study this, and this one has this new thing, and this one has a new computer in their room, etc., etc. And I was wondering, how do we get that we should have the same excitement that our children have when they come to a new year of school? That buzz when we're getting ready for Rosh Hashanah, for a new year. And the answer that Joshua is telling us is, don't wait till you get into the new year. While you're still in the Jordan crossing over, at that moment you should read and write the Torah. You should recognize the values, the power, the things that will make you excited about the new year. You could come to Rosh Hashanah, the shul, and yeah, you know what? Shul is here. Okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to smile at the rabbi and I'm going to hear the same jokes as I heard last year. And it's going to be the same place, the same cantor. Or you could prepare. You write on the stones while you're on the other side, while you're still crossing over. You get ready for the new year. Maybe, just maybe, then we could have that excitement that our children have when they begin a new year. Especially when they begin a new school, or when they begin college or graduate school. Moses and Joshua are letting us know what's important to do as we prepare for the first year. It's hard to get excited every day, but for a new year, it behooves us to prepare and to get ready for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur properly. I read this remarkable story on Facebook shared by the man that it happened to. His name is Rabbi Benny. Cantor Benny. He's a cantor at the Parky Synagogue in Manhattan. And he writes how finally, after a full year planning, he was going to fly into Venice with his wife on vacation. And they were going to celebrate Shabbos in Florence, where he was going to sing as a cantor at a celebration that was a special celebration. And they were all excited, they planned it, and then one thing happens to another. There were delays on the way to the airport, and they missed the flight, and then their connection in Rome was missed, and then they lost some luggage, and then they didn't have Wi-Fi in their hotel, and he was sitting on there wondering why. I mean, sometimes you miss a flight, you have an issue, you're late, but why were so many challenging things happening to him at once? And then he says he didn't find out till the last Sunday. It was only a 1 week vacation till Sunday of his vacation. He's in Venice. It's hot. And he's walking by and he sees these two young Chabad students from the yeshiva in Paris. And instead of going on vacation, they had come to Venice, and in the boiling hot weather, they were sitting there with their hats and their jackets, and they had a little table and they were wrapping people on tefillin. It happened to be, it was a quiet day, Sunday, the heat was on. So he ended up engaging them. He always loves Chabad, although he's not a Chabadnik, but he ended up engaging them. And, he felt bad for them, and he was remarked by their inspiration that they were sitting there themselves in the heat, on such a day. And then the guy says, one of the kids said, I need to tell you a story. He says, Friday, we were sitting here, wrapping on tefillin, and we saw this old, elderly man walking by, and he felt like he couldn't even stand. So one of us went, we walked with him, we helped him, we sat him down by a table, we got him a glass of water. And then I asked him, are you Jewish? And the 96-year-old guy says, no, I'm not Jewish. But he says, my mother was Jewish. So the Chabadnik finds the opportunity, he says, your mother was Jewish, that means you're Jewish. Would you put on tefillin? And after some convincing, he got him to put on tefillin. And the guy says, wow, could you imagine, it's the first day of Elul, and I'm going to be able to wrap tefillin on a 96-year-old who admitted he never even knew he was Jewish, never did a mitzvah one day in his life. And they wrapped the tefillin. And then as the guy's leaving, the Chabadnik sees that he's weak. So he takes him by the hand and he walks with him through the Jewish ghetto in Venice till he gets to his house. And he says, good Shabbos, and he lets him off. The next day, Shabbos, he's walking by this guy's house. This guy's a little apartment. And he sees ambulances, etc., etc. And he inquires, and he finds out that this man wasn't feeling well in the middle of the night, and he had passed away overnight. And the Chabadnik looks at this Benny, the Chazan from the Park Synagogue. He says, Friday was the best day of my life. Best day of my life, because although it was sad that a person passed away, but I got the opportunity on the last day of his life to give him the opportunity to do the first and only mitzvah he ever do, to wrap tefillin. Benny says he was crying. And suddenly, in the middle of the Venice ghetto, him and these two Chabad rabbis start dancing and jumping. And everyone was looking at them, they fell off the roof. But they were crying and dancing and jumping from this story. And then he says he came back to his hotel. And he said he understood the message that Hashem was sending to him. He says, here I was, complaining about my life, about missing my flight, about my connection, about luggage, about my Uber. He says, then I realized these boys, they probably didn't have a problem with luggage because they had no much luggage. They probably didn't have a problem with the Uber because they took a bus. They didn't have a problem with Wi-Fi in a hotel because they stayed in the most basic place. But look how happy and passionate they were, and how much joy they got from helping another Jew. I was remarked by this. It touched me very deeply. I shared it on Facebook so you can see it if you go onto my page, from the man of the story himself. But it made me think about what Joshua said. That while Joshua was crossing the Jewish people, he wrote with them on the stone the whole Torah. He wanted them to get excited about going into the land of Israel. He wanted them to be like that second or third or fourth or fifth grader who's sharpening his number 2 pencil, getting ready for the first day of school and making sure all his notebooks are ready. May Hashem bless us. As we come to the new year, we should engrave the Torah in our hearts. And we should have that excitement and anticipation for a new year, just like our children do when they begin a new school. And that God should bless us to be inscribed and written a ksiva v'chasima taiva for a healthy and happy and a good new year.